Hello everyone, it's David Loscom, and today I'm analyzing a really cool game that was played at the FIDE World Chess Cup in 2021. Now this was played between Andersen Maz and Salinas Herrera Pablo. So this is pretty cool. And I'm first going to show you guys very briefly the game that was played between Byrne and Fischer in 1963, because there are some similarities in the attack between these two games, so it is very important to study the classics and to study games that have been played before, especially the really amazing ones. So essentially there is this idea of sacrificing on f2, and Bobby Fischer does that, which he goes down a piece, but then he gets this devastating attack, and the e3 pawn falls, as well as a lot of pressure on this diagonal against the white king. Yeah, so this is a very nice attack, and after queen d7, well, Byrne went ahead and resigned because queen out here is coming. The rook is guarding the e-file, so the white king cannot escape that way. And we can see that this knight is also under attack as well. So it is very difficult for white to defend this. In fact, the computer is already giving black a 5-pawn advantage here. So that was a really cool game that was played between Byrne and Fischer. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the one that was played between Andersen Mads and Salinas Herrera. Now here, yeah, this is pretty standard play. I see this in the Kali system with the bishop on b2. This is the semi-Slav defense, but it's very similar to that, and I played the Kali in the London system before. Both are extremely solid. Now here, typically, what white wants to do is at some point take on c5 in such a way that it gives black an isolani on d5. So that is what white is going to look to do, is to try and create a favorable pawn structure over here. Now rook to c8 is a very nice move because we can see that white's rook is on d1. So you could argue that the rook should have been better placed on c1, especially if the d-file does not open. Now if the d-file does open up, then perhaps the rook is good on d1, but if the d-file remains closed, then the rook would have been better placed on c1. So that is what black is doing here, and this is pretty cool. So white plays bishop h3, and just looks to increase some pressure, preparing to take here on c5 at an opportune time, but black goes ahead and takes right away, allowing himself to have an isolani on d5. Now isolanis will give your pieces really amazing outposts in chess. So even though it is a pawn weakness, it will make your pieces much better. And as long as not too many of them are traded off. Yeah, because in the endgame, the pawn can become a weakness and can be lost, but in the middle game, it can be a strength. So here, black just simply increases pressure on the c-file, and white is probably wishing that he had the rook on c1 and that the queen was somewhere else. He drops the knight back in order to defend this knight. However, there is a d4 pawn sacrifice alert potentially on the board because of this huge diagonal that we saw in the Bobby Fischer game. So that's an important thing to look out for, is that diagonal can become extremely important in the attack. Now, I would like to point out, though, that instead of dropping the knight back, simply playing f3 was better to prevent the knight from getting out to e4. And also, when white's knight is on d4, it blockades the pawn on d5 and greatly limits this bishop on b7. But once that knight moves, then there's all kinds of potential for that bishop to get into the game. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at some more things. So, knight d4 is played, which is the main line. But that's not the very best move because it does allow Andersen this very important resource in order to bail out and save his game. He could have played queen takes on e4 here, which is pretty exciting. After pawn takes back, rook takes, and at the end of these complications, we can see that white is doing pretty good. Yeah, white has a rook and a bishop versus a queen. The pawn count is equal, but white should be able to hold this. Yeah, it will be a bit tricky, and black will be just a little bit better, because technically Black is, well, it's going to have a little bit easier time coordinating his pieces. But at the same time, though, white should be able to hold that. Yeah, so at first the rooks are a little bit awkwardly placed for white, but at some point they could get coordinated. So that was a very nice potential save from white. And if queen takes here, well, the best move is to play pawn takes, because if queen takes back, then white is simply going to be winning here in this variation. So for example, if rook takes, bishop takes, bishop takes, bishop takes, and at the end of this, white is going to be up by a piece. Yeah, so that doesn't quite work out. Yeah, so it is better to take with the pawn, but then white sacrificed the queen for the knight, and then is able to get a second knight and a bishop. So that's where the material is coming from. So at that point, white has 3 minor pieces for a queen. And then black can take here and sacrifice the exchange for 2 minor pieces. And then we end up having a rook and a bishop instead of 3 pieces for a queen. So that's the material exchanges that happen there. I went through that a bit fast. But yeah, this is a really exciting game. So here, knight d to e2 was played, then knight e4. Knight e4 is not the very best move. It's slightly inaccurate because it does allow this queen takes e4 resource, which essentially allows white to bail out before things get too bad. But white does miss that. However, what should black have played instead of knight to e4? Well, the right move, I believe, let me look here. What was the right move? I think the right move was knight here. Yes, knight e5 was the right move. Because essentially bishop takes is not good, and I can illustrate why. If bishop takes, it looks like that black is just losing material, but this attack is going to be incredibly strong. Yeah, so black is currently down material, but d4 is coming, and that would allow the bishop and the knight to work together. If white were to take that knight, then we have the pawn push forward. And we can see that at the end of this, black is going to win back material by taking here on c3. So white moves the king back, that way it doesn't come with a check, which would potentially win the queen. I mean, black's queen, well, actually it would win the queen. Yeah, because if rook takes, and if that came with check, then queen takes, then knight takes, it would be a discovered check, and that would allow black to avoid losing the queen there. Yeah, so white can't take because this comes with a check, and then the queen is fine. So yeah, so this is very, very exciting, very intense game. It's pretty cool. So therefore knight e5 is best, and then after a move like bishop to g2 in order to stop knight f3, then knight e4. And the point here is that queen takes doesn't work anymore because there is no rook and bishop coordinated on d7 to capture a piece there. Yeah, because the piece that was on d7 has moved to e5. So therefore the queen sacrifice doesn't work because it doesn't pick up enough material. Yeah, so if we go back to where the knight came here, this works here because the bishop and the rook are coordinated. But once this knight has moved, then that's just no longer the case. Alrighty, so knight e4, it was very important to illustrate that so that way people could understand it, because there is a lot of information there. Alright, so knight e4, and I tried, but I did go a bit fast with that. So a3 is played. Yeah, because Andersen is thinking that really the only problems are what's happening here. And so a3 is a very natural looking move in order to essentially solve these problems on the king side. But knight takes f2, and this is what happened in the Bobby Fischer game. Knight takes f2, a stunning sacrifice, very nice move. So Andersen goes ahead and takes here on b4, but Andersen could have played king takes f2. Let's take a look at what happens if that is played. Then queen takes e3 comes with check, the king has to move, queen check, king moves again, the bishop check, and this is actually going to lead to a checkmate. Yeah, because the king has no squares to go to, it's in check, so the bishop would need to be captured, but then the rook is captured, and after the bishop drops back, rook takes is a checkmate. So that is pretty cool. Therefore, this knight on f2 cannot be captured, because queen takes e3 comes with check, and there's just so many checks in there that eventually lead to a checkmate, and there's nothing that white can do. Therefore, white goes in and takes that bishop. That way there is no bishop to c5 possibilities. But then knight takes on h3, king f1. Now, if king moves out to g2 instead, then we have d4 check, and we can see that the white king has to either take the knight or to try and block the check. And if the white king takes the knight, then this is going to lead to a really cool checkmate. Yeah, queen f6 checkmate. That is awesome. And I mean, if e4 is played, then this is just going to lead to loss of material, and the attack continues. And there's always potential for checkmate as well. Yeah, so that wouldn't be good either. So let's go ahead and head back to the main line. So therefore, king f1 is played in order to get out of these potential checks. But then queen takes e3, and this doesn't checkmate in one move. So white has to do something about that and plays queen f5 to defend that. Now, queen out to g1 doesn't work yet because the knight defends g1. So black instead brings his knight into the game, knight f6, in order to bring in more resources to help attack, which is a very good idea. Then bishop out to c1. Now, queen takes h3 was possible. Yeah, so this could have been played here. But if it is played, though, then, well, the attack is incredibly strong, and there is going to be a checkmate here, or just a great loss of material. Yeah, the queen could be lost, and then a checkmate or even more loss of material would follow. So, therefore, the queen can't take the knight on h3. So white tries bishop out to c1 to chase away the black queen. But black simply ignores it and plays knight out to g4. So if the queen is captured, then the knight can capture back, and this is a really, really cool checkmate. Yeah, both of the knights working together, and there's nowhere for the white king to run to. So instead of taking the queen, simply rook out to d3. And and then d4 is played, and once again, black is offering up the queen. Now, if the bishop were to take the queen here, then knight takes on h2 is a checkmate. So therefore, the queen is not captured. Either the rook or the bishop, knight h2 is checkmate. So rook out to d1 in order to give the king more escape squares, but then comes queen out to g1. And this is checkmate, except that the queen can be captured, but the king can't move. So really the only move is to take the queen, and then knight takes on h2 is a really cool checkmate. Yeah, you don't see this very often in chess. So the rook guards this, and then the knights guard both of these. Well, the knight guards this square, and then the bishop guards this one, and the other knight gives a check. So that's pretty awesome. So thank you all for watching. Hope that you enjoyed this video. There is a lot of really cool sacrifices in chess, but this is perhaps the best one, or one of the very best ones.